For centuries, there has been an ancient practice, an incredibly powerful and transformative technique that was deliberately kept hidden. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well. Imagine an ancient key, lost through the folds of time, capable of opening the most sacred gateway, the memory of your soul. This technique doesn't teach you anything new. Instead, it strips away the veils of what's been imposed upon us. The greatest deception wasn't making us ignorant, but convincing us we were something we are not. What if today you remembered your true purpose? What if instead of searching outside, you found a voice inside you that has never left? And what if that voice could be awakened by a technique once reserved for a few initiates, carefully protected from those who would turn it into a tool of control? This isn't just a story, it's an invitation, a guide to a forbidden practice. Not because it's dark, but because it shines too brightly. Those in power fear an awakened soul more than an army of sleepwalkers. In the next few moments, we'll explore the hidden origins of this technique, its roots in forgotten schools of wisdom, why it was suppressed, distorted, or mocked by systems that prefer souls to remain asleep, and how you can practically use it to remember who you truly are, not just an identity or story, but a vibration, an eternal living consciousness. We'll delve into stories, symbols, and ancient philosophies to untangle complex ideas and return to what truly matters. This isn't a theoretical lesson, it's an inner experience. If you're willing to listen with more than just your ears, because this technique isn't something you memorize, it's something you feel, activate, and most importantly, remember. Are you ready to look beyond the surface? To question what you've been told about yourself? To walk toward what your soul has always known? Then this could be the spark you need. Forbidden doesn't always mean dangerous. Sometimes it simply means that the truth is too powerful to be openly shared. Almost every ancient culture shares a common thread, a quiet whisper spanning continents and centuries. The idea that humans have forgotten who they truly are. That life, as we know it, is like a dream, a veil separating us from our authentic selves. And that there are paths, practices, and secrets designed to awaken that sacred memory. However, here's the catch. These practices don't appear in history books, schools, or organized religions. They were hidden, banned, or distorted into superstitions, mocked and symbolically locked away so no one could unlock their true power. For example, in ancient Egypt, the priests of the houses of life performed secret initiation rituals. They would guide newcomers through symbolic death, body resting for hours, while their consciousness traveled through subtle spiritual realms under the tutelage of a master. When they returned, they had crossed the veil and remembered forever, changed. In ancient Greece, the Orphic schools described the soul as trapped within the body, not in a pessimistic way, but as part of a purification process. They practiced breathing, chanting, and trance states that allowed the soul to temporarily free itself from its earthly identity and glimpse its divine origin. This experience wasn't just revealing, it was irreversible, a transformative awakening. In ancient India, the rishis, wise seers, taught the concept of smarana or remembrance, the idea that the soul already knows its true nature. For them, spiritual ignorance wasn't about lacking information, it was about disconnection. The path back wasn't about accumulating more knowledge, but about unlearning, detaching internally, practicing silence, and aligning vibrations to restore consciousness to its original state. Despite their differences, the core of these traditions was the same, a technique, a pathway, to reconnect with the inner memory of who we truly are, beyond external identities. Then, darkness fell. Religious wars, the institutionalization of spirituality, and the rise of external control suppressing inner truths. What was once a path of remembrance became empty rituals, rigid dogmas, or heresy, distorted and sealed away as dangerous secrets. The techniques were broken apart, symbols hidden within myths, and their true teachings locked away as threats. Dangerous. To whom? To the systems that fear an awakened soul. Because once a soul remembers its true nature, it can no longer be controlled. Today, this knowledge is resurfacing, not as something new, but as a memory awakening within those ready to receive. At the most extraordinary part, this so-called forbidden technique has always been inside you, resting deep within your consciousness, simply waiting for you to recognize it. To understand the power of this technique, we must first rethink something fundamental. The soul doesn't need to learn who it is. It needs to remember, and that memory isn't born from thinking, it's born from vibration, specific frequencies that activate within you. When that frequency awakens, everything false begins to fall away, revealing what's true, shining like a quiet light. But how do you reach this frequency? The forbidden technique isn't about memorizing words or performing external rituals. It's an internal process, an inner alignment, where your body, mind, energy, and consciousness come into resonance. When this happens, your soul's memory reveals itself, not as an idea but as a living experience. Imagine your soul as a perfect melody, but layers of noise, beliefs, traumas, and conditioning cover that sound. This technique acts like a tuner. It doesn't add anything new, it simply removes what blocks the sound, polishing and harmonizing everything. As it does, the original melody begins to play again, clear and pure. This technique has three main phases. While they don't always happen in a strict sequence, all are essential to the process. The first phase is deprogramming the false self. This is the most challenging step. It involves identifying the voices inside you that aren't really yours, the thoughts you've accepted without question, the masks you wear unconsciously. You ask yourself, what am I thinking? What do I want? What am I afraid of? And then, critically, you question, is this truly me? Or was it imposed by others? This technique teaches you to clear out old mental habits, not by fighting them, but by seeing them clearly and recognizing what isn't built from your true self. Once you become aware, your true self can gently dismantle what isn't authentic, revealing your core. The second phase is activating your inner sense. As the noise begins to fade, something you've always had but rarely noticed starts to surface. This inner sense isn't based on logic or emotion. It's direct perception. It's a quiet, immediate knowing, an inner guidance that doesn't need to be forced awake. The technique helps you awaken this sense through mindful breathing, silent rituals, full presence in your body, and visualizing symbols. Here's a key idea. What you focus on with intent and devotion, your imagination, becomes real to your soul. It's not fantasy, it's a bridge. The symbols, such as a flame, a lotus, or a mirror, aren't arbitrary. They are universal images that evoke ancient memories, awakening inner visions and deepening your connection. The third phase is resonance with your true name. Hidden deep within spiritual traditions is the idea that each soul has a sacred name, not a spoken word, but a unique vibration. When you call this vibration correctly, not through words but by embodying a particular state, you recognize it instantly. It's like a door that's been closed for centuries, suddenly swinging open. This recognition isn't intellectual. It's felt, an undeniable certainty that says, "This is me. I've always been this way. I simply forgot." This process requires dedication, honesty, and commitment. It's not instant. Once initiated, something irreversible happens. Part of you begins to observe from a deeper, calmer place. That's when the true journey begins. As layers of false self weaken and your inner vibration clears, something beyond words occurs. Your soul remembers, not intellectually but experientially, like a light turning on in a room you've always known but never explored. What appears are not ideas, but presences, parts of you waiting to be seen. The unconditional lover, the trusting one, the knowing one. This awakening becomes tangible. The soul begins to recognize its origins, but there's a quiet warning. Not everything you remember will be light. When you recall who you are, you also recall who you are not. Mistakes, unhealed wounds, and unfinished stories surface. This isn't punishment but liberation. You cannot fully embrace your entire soul without facing your shadow. When practiced diligently, this technique reveals not only your light but also what you've hidden, even from yourself. That's why many traditions call this practice dangerous. For beginners, facing your truth honestly requires a degree of spiritual maturity, not measured in years but in your willingness to accept reality as it is. At this stage, many practitioners enter what can be called a conscious trance. It isn't the hypnotic state some psychology describes, but an expanded awareness, a state where the soul takes charge of perception. You sense your body and surroundings, but from a slight distance. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer control you. Your consciousness pulls back just enough to witness. From this quiet vantage point, everything gains new meaning. Emotions clarify, perceptions widen, time feels fluid, and sudden intuitions emerge. Memories from past lives or ancestral lines may surface, knowledge you never learned but somehow carry deep within. This state isn't about practice, it's about living in it. You begin to operate from a renewed center. No masks, no facade, just your authentic self. Decisions become clearer, relationships grow more honest, fears diminish. And paradoxically, the more you remember, the more you realize. The soul doesn't need to learn who it is because it already knows. It is a steady vibration, an eternal awareness that always existed, always will. This is where the most sacred event takes place, the soul settling into its true home. Once this happens, nothing remains the same. Your body continues to live, your life moves forward, but something inside you has awakened that will never sleep again. This is why this technique was called forbidden, not because it's dangerous to your body, but because it threatens everything that kept you asleep. Awakening isn't a one-time event, it's an ongoing practice. Even a brief moment of inner revelation won't automatically keep you in that state. The practice we've explored isn't just a spiritual experience, it's a compass for daily life. When integrated into your routine, it transforms seekers into wise ones, learners into teachers, routine into ritual. It isn't about strict rules, but living principles, paths to remember that, when followed with intention and perseverance, keep you awakened amidst life's chaos. True spiritual power isn't about lighting up in solitude. It's about staying awake amid noise, distraction, and chaos. Practice active silence daily, moments of full, undivided attention, where you simply breathe, observe, and let your awareness deepen. Turn your actions into sacred acts, bringing presence to everything you do, eating, walking, speaking. When you live from your inner center, every gesture becomes a remembrance. Be mindful of what you feed your mind, your thoughts, images, conversations, because everything influences your vibration. Maintain a clean environment as a sacred space for your inner growth. Speak less, but speak from the depth of your being. Your words, when rooted in remembrance, hold the power to awaken others. Act as if you already know who you are. Live as if your true self has always been with you. That's not pretension. It's tuning your vibration. Remember, the journey of awakening isn't about searching externally. It's about returning inward. You already hold the memory deep within. All you need is to activate it, to allow your true essence to surface. When that happens, your perception shifts. No longer enemies or strangers, but reflections of yourself. You stop fearing the future and start honoring it. You stop repeating broken stories and begin writing from the truth. When that truth is alive within you, everything changes. You no longer seek approval because you are rooted in something greater. You don't chase answers because your silence has wisdom. You don't pursue love because you realize you are love itself. This isn't just an empty promise, it's an invitation, a call for courage. The path of remembrance is beautiful but not always easy. It strips away illusions, rebuilds your inner truth, and confronts what you've hidden. But in doing so, it reveals your essence. It allows you to choose who you truly are. If this message resonates with you and you feel that spark inside, I invite you to share in the comments, "Yes, this is for me." Let's awaken together. Subscribe to this channel, share this message, and pass it on. Because the greatest revolution begins within. An awakened soul transforming the world. Not through violence or dogma, but through love, remembrance, and authenticity. When enough souls awaken, the world will shift. From the inside, out, you are here to remember. And remember that process has already begun.